And I took him to the library every single week. We walked there and went to story time in the evenings. They had a children's story time, which I took him to. And we checked out tons of books, and I read to him a lot. He also played with some of the kids at the library there. And he was always happy. Anyone who ever saw him knew he was very happy, well cared for child. I remember that when he was walking very early, I remember some people not looking at me very nicely. He was walking really early, and I started getting some really weird, jealous comments about what was I doing to my son. I was going to hurt his legs. And a couple of people tried to suggest that I was forcing him to do some of these things, and I really wasn't. I mean, I think I even said that he pointed out that number 10 and said 10 at 7 months. It could have been earlier than 7 months. I documented it, but it was way ahead of the time that kids usually speak. And the fact that he not only spoke and said a word, but identified what he was talking about was really shocking. And like I said, he cut his first tooth at age 2 months, and then that dental record disappeared. When I later went back to that dental office, and with my fiance then, to pick up his dental records, his first visit to the dentist was gone. They had no record of it. That was the one where the dentist diagnosed him with enamel dysplasia. So the next record that they had was something like at 4 months or 6 months. It was later. It was the second visit that his record started with, because someone had removed his first record. And I also documented that. I had emailed my mother telling them and telling everyone about when my son cut his first tooth. And he was walking really early, and I remember people being jealous and mean. Sometimes. Not all the time. I mean, not a bunch of people. More than anything, I think I noticed some of that jealousy or some of the callous comments coming from white people. I mean, I'm not saying that all Hispanics liked me at all. But I didn't feel like, because I didn't get any weird comments or jealous kinds of things from them because my son was walking early. I mean, I think they knew that he was very happy, and he knew Hispanic kids in the neighborhood, and there was nothing wrong with him or with the way that I parented him. And so it was really heartbreaking then to see him suffering the way that he was suffering. And when I went ahead and moved to East Wenatchee, by the time I moved to East Wenatchee, there had only been one CPS report against me. There was the weird comment by my social worker, Tina Thornton, which really didn't amount to anything. It was just some weird thing that she did. But it wasn't like they came out to talk to me or anything like that. And then the only other report or complaint that came against me was this one from the hospital where a nurse had said that I took my son home without car seat. And that was closed, and an end was put to that. And then I called my parents frantically, though, after that happened, because I said they were trying to take my kid away. And I just instinctively knew that they were not going to quit. My parents said, well, if they do take you, right now is not the time to worry. If they do take your son, then we'll get a lawyer. But they weren't. I think that they had people forcing them to say what they said and misleading them. And now that I know they work for the government, I blame the United States government for what they did. But I knew that it wasn't going to end with that one report. They wanted me to leave the state. I didn't leave. And I knew instinctively that if they came after me one time, when people had already been trying to take my kid away so so desperately, and when Malcolm Butler was trying to wean me off of my child from me, I knew that they would not quit until they took my son from me. And one thing that I had also said to Krista Schneider over the phone before we quit our communications and talking to each other was, all these things have happened, and I didn't have a nervous breakdown. And I said, I think the only thing that could really cause me to have a nervous breakdown would be if somebody took my child. And it's really kind of sick, because I think that she relayed that information to individuals who thought, if we can get take her child from her, she will end up in a nut house and will always have a cover. I think that the people who had committed crimes up to that point felt that that was in their best interest, certainly, would be to traumatize me in a way that they thought was going to be a sure thing for sending me over to a mental institution. Because then I would be discredited, my testimony would be nothing forever. And people wanted to take my son, I guess. So I knew that it wasn't going to end with that. And sure enough, as soon as I moved over to East Wenatchee, things got worse. And people started working even harder at what they were doing to me and my son. And I will get into that in just a second, because I have to take care of something. So the next thing that happened was I was moving all of my belongings over to the East Wenatchee place, and now the camera is blurring in and out. So I am waiting for that to stop. So we were at our location in East Wenatchee, and by that time I wasn't speaking to my family anymore. My grandparents, yes, but my cousins, ever since I had gone out with this one woman and then she ditched me and I got raped, they didn't really talk to me anymore. I don't know if it's there was a bad situation that they were worried about, or that they knew this one individual and they were being threatened themselves in some way. Because he was a doctor. He's an Italian-American doctor. There are a bunch of Italian-Americans there, including Rick Baken. And if Rick Baken is a bad FBI agent, he is an FBI agent. And a lot of bad cops, and throw in an FBI agent and mafia maybe, and it can do a lot of harm if they think that they might get in trouble, or one of them might get in trouble for something. So I for whatever reason, I wasn't hearing from my cousins anymore. I know that I talked to them about different things, and one point, one cousin said I asked too many questions. But I asked questions because I was curious about people, and I just wanted to know what they were doing and what was going on. And I wasn't trying to just get information for any reason. And then I had things set up over there in East Wenatchee, and probably 1 week after we were there, after I had fully moved all of my belongings over and we were settled in, all of a sudden, and I don't know what happened, because I know without any doubt that the state didn't like the fact that I was getting a place to live, even with my grandparents helping me. And I feel very confident that my grandfather has been blackmailed and told what to do by individuals that work in that community. So I'm not sure what negotiations occurred to even stay out of the way while I moved with my son to that area, but they made sure that my son and I were tortured there once we were there. So my son and I moved to East Wenatchee, and about 1 week after the move was finalized, we were being tortured, both of us. It was the same thing at night. It was the muscles twitching, and in our arms and legs and entire body. But then it was much, much worse than it had been on Methow. Although the very first time someone did something on Methow, it was very noticeable and it was very bad. And there were a few times where it seemed like a little bit of a break on Methow, here and there. And then once we were in East Wenatchee, it was every single night. Every single night we were tortured. And even during the day, sometimes things were getting sort of bad, and I usually had my son out of the house. I didn't stay in the house with my son a lot. We went out and had excursions and that kind of thing. But in the East Wenatchee location, we were a little bit more in that area because there was a river there, which we went to and he played at. I did take him to the playground, which was next door, and took him downtown to the library still to go shopping. But there weren't as many playmates in the neighborhood. There weren't any kids right there. So I usually had to take him, to a different area for that. But it really didn't matter. The thing is we were being tortured. My son's, he was twitching so badly that he would go from his entire body, you could see all the muscles under his skin twitching, to his arm being raised. He was raising his arm up in the sky while his arm was twitching. I've never seen that with any child. I've never seen that in any kind of circumstance. He and I also I started having extreme bad lower back pain. And at first I thought it was from like childbirth injuries, and I asked for painkillers for it. And then I realized now, when I first was had my delivery, I had a few painkillers to help with the pain, but I didn't have like a ton. I did have definitely pain. I needed some painkillers, but it wasn't extreme. And why would my pain suddenly escalate 10 times after my injuries were older, when we were in East Wenatchee? So it didn't make any sense, because my body should have been healing, and the kind of pain, lower back pain and pelvic pain that I was having didn't make any sense as to with regard to the natural course of an injury. And I finally recognized that it was the exact same pain that had sent me to the emergency room early when my son was 7 months old, when we were at an area where there was a police officer and a U.S. Army military man. So I know that I finally realized that there was something really wrong, that it was some kind of technology. I mean, the one form of torture was technology.